I'm Dr. Charlene, and this is the Recovery Blueprint. And today we're going to talk about your diagnosis. And that could be a number of things. It could be Hashimoto's, it could be mold, it could be Lyme, it could be reactivated Epstein-Barr virus, it could be lupus, it could be kidney disease, who knows? There are so many different diagnoses out there, and sometimes it can be helpful, and other times it can be a cage. And what if you have that mystery illness? You have all of these symptoms and all of these problems going on, and no one's ever given you an actual clear diagnosis with an ICD-10 code attached to it. That's a stupid insurance billing code, by the way, if you're not familiar. And sometimes it can be helpful, and it's a nice thing to have, especially when it validates what you're going through. But for you mystery diagnosis people out there, there's no validation. And I bet that you have, at least by one doctor, been offered depression medication or anxiety medication and recommended for a psych eval. And you're not crazy. You may or may not need that medication. You may be having some depression or some anxiety, and that's normal. And we can get by with the medication, or we can get by without it. And so let's talk about how your diagnosis puts you in a cage rather than liberating you. I have worked for years now exclusively with Hashimoto's people, and I'm finding that my methods are transferable across diagnoses. And so now I'm kind of opening up to a broader world of people who are suffering needlessly and just need a solution and a process. And my Hashimoto's patients, especially ones that maybe have been diagnosed with hypothyroidism decades ago, but are just now given the diagnosis of Hashimoto's, what does it do for them? Really nothing. Nothing in terms of their doctors treating them differently. If they're already on a thyroid medication, probably levothyroxine, because of the hypothyroidism, their doctor's not going to change anything or do anything different or give them any other recommendations because they have Hashimoto's. They just don't have another tool. They have one tool, and it is this one medication, and that's it. Basically, you're just going to be tired and overweight and lose your hair, and your joints are going to hurt, and you're probably going to get diagnosed with 2 other autoimmune diseases before we're done with this, and that's it. That's all they're going to do for you. They just don't have the solutions. And even in the functional medicine community, trust me, I love this group of people because they really are trying so hard to get away from the industrialized medicine that isn't working and find something that works better. And it does work better. And it has its limitations. I was there. I've been there. Trust me. I have practiced functional medicine for nearly a decade now. There are a lot of great things about it. And I also know where it falls short. And these people who are practicing functional medicine have better solutions for, let's say, my Hashimoto's example here, but it's still not getting them all the way there. And maybe it is. Sometimes I've had people who have gone into remission, and we've gotten their Hashimoto's into remission solely with the use of functional medicine. But the first little sign of inflammation coming back into the body, they get flared up again. It's just the limitations within functional medicine. And so my patients who have Hashimoto's who sometimes would come in with this diagnosis and they're in a cage. And maybe you're like that with your diagnosis too. Maybe it's your Lyme diagnosis or your Epstein-Barr or chronic fatigue syndrome. Maybe it's fibromyalgia, and that's a really tough one. One, it's tough to get the diagnosis. It's basically a last resort diagnosis for people. And it has symptoms that match like 20 other diseases. And so maybe that's your diagnosis, that's your cage. Maybe it's that mystery illness. You are that zebra or unicorn, as I like to call them, because I think they're prettier. But that puts you in a cage, because what is it doing? Is it shrinking your world? Now, because of all of your symptoms, do you go do less things? Do you get out of the house less often? Are you missing work more? Are you saying no to fun activities with friends and family? Your world is getting smaller. You are ending up in that cage. And then I've come across people who wear their diagnosis as a badge of honor. I know people who literally tattoo their diagnosis date or some representation of their disease on their body. Now, that's an identity shift in the wrong direction, I think. Why would I want to publicly identify myself as somebody who's associated with this disease? I'm literally strapping myself to the cage to where at that point, that person honestly may never want to get better because they've so strongly identified with their disease. I work with people who could give a shit about the disease and just want to get better and get back to their world, get back to their lives. Their world has been shrinking for who knows how long, sometimes decades, and it's time to expand that. Now, I personally can't imagine never traveling again. And I know people who have been saddled with such challenging conditions, as in like paralysis, quadriplegia. I have a good friend who's a quadriplegic and became so at the age of 17, just after graduating high school. And he has not let that stop him. He is out in the world doing great things. He travels all over the place. He actually went to Paris for his honeymoon. He met and fell in love with a wonderful person, and they have an awesome little girl at home too, a little 1-year-old girl at the time that I'm recording this. And that is the type of person who is resilient, who has not let his disease or diagnosis of quadriplegia stop him from living his life. He did not let his world shrink because he really took life by the horns. He grabbed the bull by the horns and he just decided to live anyway. And that's what expansion is about. That is true liberation. And so if you're using your disease, your diagnosis, as a badge of honor or something that you cling to for whatever reason, and trust me, I bet you anything, if you are doing that, your reasons are valid at some level. But I challenge you to let that go. Are you willing to let that disease diagnosis go so you can get better? Are you willing to unshackle yourself or step out of the cage so that you can get back to the things that you love? And we'll explore all of this in the program, I promise. We will explore all of this deep healing, not just on the physical level, but I will show you ways to get rid of all of the stuff holding you back, all of these things that are tying you to your disease, your diagnosis. And if you are that type of person, if you are resilient, if you are ready, then this is the place for you. Thank you so much for listening, and as always, be well.